You know, it's rare I come across just a title of a video and it's like, you know what? I'm gonna just do a video on this. Why? Because I do. This video is from like a year ago, and well, we're talking about it now. Fake optimization of modern graphics and how we hope to save it. Because you have, without even watching the video, you have these games that are being quote unquote remade and they're just being given slightly better graphics and then being resold for 40, 50, 60 goddamn dollars simply because of the graphical update. And it's like, I'm sorry, if a game's 20 years old, I would just refuse to pay any more than fucking $10. Like, even Lucy over here is like, that's ridiculous. What type of goofy shit is that? And then you have all these remakes and remasters that are touted as graphical updates, but there's a reason why those have become a bad word in this household. Like, we know they make artistic, and we know they make, concessions for modern sensibilities with older games. And it's just the idea that the current people know better than the devs made in the past, the gamers have made in the past that actually sold better, right? It's ridiculous. It's one of those things that if I see just off principle, like, you're going to lose me. Like, you might, be successful and you might trick a lot of other people, but I'm gonna sleep better knowing that I'm not the one putting money towards this industry. But let's give this a watch, shall we? Enough rambling.
This is an investigative report addressing the most negative aspects affecting modern game development, specifically the deterioration of realistic graphics and the manufactured increase in computing cost. I am Kevin Jimenez, the founder of Threat Interactive, a new game production studio aiming to unlock the full potential this next generation of gaming can provide, and we'll show just how by the end of this video. There are three interconnected factors that need to be addressed: creativity, performance, and visuals.
Yeah, and all these are things that have taken a nosedive in the past, I'd say since like 2015. Like, it was the breaking point, maybe like 2016, where all of these things have taken a nosedive, and now we're to the point where people justify schlop. Like, they'll be like, yeah, well, it might make some money. Yeah. And it's like, well, give me your opinion, because my opinion is okay. It may be successful, right? But and I'm gonna just start judging countries based off their cultural output, right? I'm not an economist. I don't fucking care the GDP. I don't fucking care, any of the 9 different things that justify how a country's doing well. I'm gonna create my own uh, statistic, my own visual on how a nation's doing good, and that's its cultural output. Like, there's that goddamn anime horse racing game that came from China blowing the fuck up, you know. And again, I know nothing else about the Chinese culture. Like, I guess they're communists, modern day communists, you know. But they're releasing legitimately good games and good entertainment. Same thing with Japan. I don't know all the fucking inner machinations of Japan, but they're releasing good anime, right? A fucking dating fucking sim game that blew up called Miside came from Russia. I'm like, like, what is America's cultural output? Like, we're exporting censorship, we're exporting Karenism, we're exporting just this idea. I'm scratching my face. This is probably fucking up my model. They're importing this idea that, you know, we need to become effectively a police state and monitor every action people do online. And they're using it to combat porn, and to no one's surprise, they're using the protect the children argument. You know, at first, people unilaterally was like, shut the fuck up. Why are you trying to find out what the fuck I do? It was like, oh, you got something to hide. It was like, no, but I don't want to give my personal information, right? You know, it's difficult to comprehend if you're a Karen, or if you're a censor, or if you're just some sort of, you know, despot, but I don't want to give my shit. But that seems to be America's cultural output nowadays. You know, remakes, remasters, prequels, sequels that have overinflated prices in production. So, and I mean, again, I'm not, you know, I adapt to the situations that are plaguing media. So that's how I'm a thing. Yes.
Let's begin with creativity. Several videos online are already bringing awareness to the decreasing quality of gameplay, open worlds, and the microtransactions affecting the majority of games.
The two biggest video game makers in America now make most of their money not from people buying games, but on subscriptions and spending within those games.
In fact, Electronic Arts...
Yeah, microtransactions. You know, and I made this point in Stellar Blade, that you have the gameplay loop. Like, most games have what's called a gameplay loop, which is, you know, something that you do in every game that you do once or twice, and it's just sort of, you know, effectively the base mechanic of the game. And most everything else is built around the gameplay loop, right? So with Battlefront, well, the gameplay loop of Battlefront, the old one, the classics, is it's a third-person shooter where you go down, shoot enemies, capture points, and run that arbitrary number of your enemy to zero before they run yours to zero. That's the gameplay loop. Now, it's Star Wars, you know, it's uses, you know, Star Wars like aesthetics. You know, in the second one you can play the Jedi, right? So the loop is third-person shooter, run, you know, to zero, jump in vehicles to hell, but you know, the set dressing is a Star Wars game, right? The problem with games nowadays is the gameplay loop simply exists to push people to buying microtransactions, paying for subscriptions, you know, paying for skins, paying for season passes, you know, and that's not the case with gacha game, because the gambling is the loop in every gacha game, right? The gameplay loop is the gacha, but they try using better stories, better graphics, anime bitches to try getting you into enjoying the loop. And one of these things is actually creating good entertainment, where the other one is not. And I'll let you be the deciding. You decide that for yourself.
Arts and Take-Two Interactive both make a staggering 75% of their money from what's called microtransactions.
However, I personally loathe the popular critique that photorealistic games are not fun, they lack art style, and we need worse graphics to fix it. This defeatist attitude is a byproduct of modern development, not visual progress. As industry game developer veterans put it, one thing you do is 10 things you don't. Currently, graphics dominate the do list, leaving gameplay and art style in the don't category. Graphics are currently in a chaotic state, but once the entire developer industry can easily create highly performant photorealism within their engines, competition can begin to solely focus on art direction and gameplay.
Yeah, I shouldn't keep pausing after like 30 seconds, but in any type of corporate environment where the point is to be efficient, like what he just said is absolutely correct, right? Like, there's people whose entire job it is to, you know, do a task as quickly and as efficiently as possible. And in some cases, the end product may even suffer, right? Because it's not something the consumer like, and it could be things the consumer never sees. But when the consumer starts seeing it, that's where the problem comes out. Like the red ring of death for the Xbox 360. Like it was caused by an engineering error. That the engineers are like, you either fix this or there's going to be problems. But Xbox was like, no, we're going to shove it out anyway. It'll be fine. It'll be fine. And then you get the red ring of death, and they have to recall, several million copies of the Xbox 360. Like, again, if you work the corporate environment, this is just the way it is. And in video games, it's really no different.
Recent opportunities for outstanding games with captivating stories and incredible gameplay have been tarnished by the next two factors.
Oh, I forgot to do the thing. Hold on. I'm gonna do the thing. This is gonna cut into the video, but YouTube does this thing where it's literally just. Wait, I should have. Okay.
30
That's
FPS
weird.
on next-gen consoles is
thing.
unacceptable for many reasons. It appears choppy.
Yeah, 30 FPS, and you can personally not care, but if you've played a 60, 120 FPS game, it is something you look at. Like, it was painful getting back into Elden Ring. And I guess I've just been, I've been spoiled with a decent PC because I play Night Rain on my PC. It's like objectively better. It's just it feels better than 30 FPS. I play 30 FPS on for the new DLC for Elden Ring, and like it hurts. Now, well, I'll go back to my Xbox, but for fuck's sakes. Like, why? I don't know why people are kidding themselves. People justify 30, and they do this thing where it's like, oh, well, real life isn't 30 FPS. Brother, you're being lied to. Please, for the love of God, shut the hell up. Like, we don't even have, we have a specifically different measurement of, like, how things move in real life that is not applicable to games. Not applicable to the TV screen and what you're seeing on it. Like, what are we talking about?
To reliance on accessibility such as motion blur. 30 FPS also induces extreme judder and motion on numerous screens. With only 30 frames, the quality of gameplay logic and basic responsiveness falls short, especially when tons of other titles offer that same basic responsiveness. There are numerous 8th generation console titles that ran near photorealistic visuals at 60 FPS, and that was on 2013 2 teraflop hardware. So 30 FPS titles like Spider-Man PS4 are kind of excused here. But modern studios are churning out these half-baked games with absurd requirements, creating an illusion that 13 teraflop 2021 architecture isn't powerful enough for basic photorealistic performance standards set years ago.
Yeah, and they're saying this just so they can sell it to you later. Like, I'd say, like, again, harking right back to 2014, 2015. Like, that was, like, the pinnacle of game design. And now we just went down, like, straight down from that ever since. Like, okay, maybe there's certain games you can probably point out to a couple games that look good, but I could point out to like 10, 20 modern games, $70 games that look bad just on a graphical idea, on the graphics idea of it. They just look bad.
This leads us to our final issue. The basic standard of 60 FPS is only offered at the cost of our next and biggest problem, visuals. I firmly advocate for photorealism, but the industry is advancing in it in a manner that is worthless during basic movement, through a cancer in real-time rendering, a graphics programming scapegoat that is destroying every game in its path. It's called TAA, and that stands for Temporal Anti-Aliasing, and this includes upscalers. There are great videos trying to bring awareness about this, but Digital Foundry has an ignorant video that is quickly spreading inaccurate information that is damaging real-time rendering. I will expose false narratives as I show why TAA has ruined modern optimization trends in conjunction with an abusive use of the power offered in current generation consoles. TAA and upscalers stem from anti-aliasing, effects that aim to mimic the benefits of 4K plus rendering, because 4K 60 FPS on affordable hardware, including next generation consoles, isn't feasible. True 4K or higher rendering ensures smooth edges on objects, better sampling on textures, thin objects, and specular highlights. As you decrease the resolution, stair-stepping aliasing emerges, and thin details on meshes and specular highlighting breaks apart. FXAA addresses stair-stepping for a cheap cost but introduces noticeable blur on the entire image. SMAA eliminates these same edges without any blur, making it much more superior. In fact, the only advantage 4K downsampled to 1080p versus 1080p with just SMAA applied is thin detail and specular sampling. But modern TAA is designed to run at any resolution by jittering the rendering view in 8 or more positions as frames are generated.
Yeah, like I see that in the background. That this is completely new to me, so I might learn something. But yeah, that looked rough.
After pixel reprojection logic is calculated and designed, the past frames are combined, creating an 8K-like resolution addressing thin, undersampled objects and specular highlighting. But all versions of these designs have several issues. Temporal designs are destructive to object or character motion within view. The problems I'm about to show aren't usually visible under a slower threshold of motion, which is why the industry markets with slow cinematic trailers or graphical showcases. But motion produced from gameplay gets annihilated with ghosting, blur, and smearing visuals. This is why still or slow image quality comparisons by major tech influencers are both worthless and misleading. What's the point in playing a realistic game that looks like this during basic player interactions?
See, and wait, hold on.
YouTube compression conveniently hides these effects of TAA and is usually mistaken for video compression.
Because I'd see things like this in like Stellar Blade, and I'm like, okay, that was kind of weird. It's not really as egregious as in this game or back here in this game, right? It's not as bad
During basic player,
but the ghosting effect, like once you see it, right, you see it in almost every single game if you look close, and it just looks weird.
interactions. YouTube compression conveniently hides these effects of TAA and is usually mistaken for video compression artifacts. The 4K on YouTube resembles native uncompressed 1080p more than actual native uncompressed 4K. Chances are you're playing games through an HDMI or better, meaning your game's image quality is uncompressed. Temporal solutions and motion degrade resolution similar to low bitrate video compression, so having TAA on your gameplay is like adding compression to your gaming experience. Because of current hardware prices that aren't changing anytime soon,
yeah, like, hold on. There's a way to do this in a way where it
changing anytime soon.
Like, I think this looks just
1080p and 1440p remain the most consumer-friendly.
Holy fuck. Yes, motion blur is off. And I hate motion blur, but I understand why it exists. It's covering this shit, but this is with
target
it
resolutions. But TAA ruins these resolutions the most.
Yeah, and you see that definitely.
TAA and upscalers not only ruin affordable gaming resolutions, but also damage luxury resolutions for those with enthusiast grade graphic GPUs.
Yeah.
TAA and upscalers are often bundled with ugly sharpeners that fail to fix ghosting or restore the original clarity and detail stripped away from smearing. The FTAA subreddit, up until the creation of the r/motion clarity subreddit, remained the only online community where consumers could finally speak loud against the industry's oxymoron stance on realistic graphics. And they've listed hundreds of games with forced TAA, with recent titles throwing out traditional AA options for upscaling methods only. Remember the SMAA versus 4K comparisons earlier? You could get the same sampling quality on thin and specular by reusing a single pass frame, which means long ghosting trails, blur, and smearing could be eliminated. I have personally compiled several pieces of data showing these temporal methods could be redesigned to prevent all these hideous motion issues, which are listed in the video description.
And, like, think about it, right? Like, most games are probably made with TAA in mind. So if you take it off, like, I feel like you'll just get worse graphics because it's the set dressing, you know, it's window dressing. It's put on specifically to make a game look visually good, but what they did was they just laid a blanket over it. Like, it's this way with most products. Like, I hate to harken all the way back to Toyota, but the Toyota Hybrid Deluxe, like the Highlander, it's made with that goofy fucking screen and the dash in mind. If you remove that, you just have this, like, eyesore of a divot where the screen should go. And it's what you're paying for. Like, you're paying for TAA in the game. And I think this is being used as, again, yet another reason to make demand a higher price for an older game, but you're not actually making it look graphically better. You're slapping TAA over it. Just, again, put the dressing on. So it effectively tricks people in thinking the graphics are better.
But clear and good TAA will never become mainstream because the smeary nature of current temporal solutions are being exploited to cover up lazy and cheap development practices. In hundreds of game titles, if you can fully disable temporal solutions, you are punished severely with numerous rendering problems. Temporal dithering and frame blending dependent rendering aspects.
Yeah, this is literally what I just... yes. Like, the games are made with this in mind. That if you take it off, you get just a worse product.
Bloom.
Ugh.
Soft shadows. Denoise replacement for ray trace shadows.
Safe like repair.
Perfecting your swing is hard.
Nice shot, Dad.
I took ads off, but we're adding.
Ambient occlusion. Screen space contact shadows. Vegetation, fur, hair.
Yeah.
Screen space reflections. Global illumination. Translucent materials.
This looks bad.
Clouds. Dithering to hide geometric camera clipping.
Huh.
Mesh introductions. And ray trace reflections. Strip away TAA in several engines and these effects transform into an incomprehensible mess or reveal a poor approach to an aspect of rendering. These are the supposed fixes and optimizations offered by temporal anti-aliasing and upscalers. But an industry lie perpetuated by Digital Foundry's TAA video is the claim that TAA and upscalers enable developers to optimize these effects by rendering them at lower resolutions, allowing TAA to smooth them with supposedly no cost. But if you do some digging, you'll discover older deferred titles from under a decade ago, rendering them.
And it is so good that people like this guy exists just to call out this just like these are effectively just blatant lies that have been perpetuated. I'm not using my goddamn the thing I'm doing. I thought it was. Hold on. How do I do this without let's just do this. Boop, boop. Like, again, like, the games are made with that idea of TAA in them. So, yeah.
Rendering the same.
It's going to look worse if you take it off. And the developers, like, Notches made a perfect tweet on how it... I mean, I don't know if it takes a lot or not to make a game look visually modern. I'm just looking at mods that do that, right? Mods for, like, Fallout, mods for Minecraft, like texture mods that do that on its own. And it's like, okay, it's something that can be done. It can probably be done without TAA being the blanket.
Basic effects independently of temporal frame sparing with similar or better performance and or similar better visual quality. And guess what? If you need extra performance from a demanding feature, that feature can be programmed to run at a lower resolution and or include its own temporal accumulation without blurring the entire frame.
Yeah,
Modern
those games that can do it,
implementations of last gen's basic visuals perform more poorly because studios leverage the power of 9th generation consoles to cut financial costs on legitimate optimization processes for faster releases. The financial savings don't end there though. TAA and upscalers enable studios to save money by integrating these popular and fully developed temporal algorithms into their engines instead of investing in the development of genuinely high-performing and self-resolving effects.
Yeah, again, it's development in a corporate environment that is like, okay, so why would you put in the time and the effort to make a game look stunning if you just slap TAA on it? The consumer is not going to know. They're not going to care. And I'll take it a step further. There's no reason why they should be expected to. Like, if you're getting, scammed, like, it's not like you can be like, oh, well, they didn't know, so they deserve to be. And it's like, well, the average consumer is not going to look into this shit. Why would they? And they shouldn't have to. If it's being pointed out that these are things just being slapped over just to make a game look good, and demand they sell it for you, but like, it's still bad. We can still say that's not good.
Since TAA, a large portion of rendering advancement papers tie in TAA or mention an upscaler such as DLSS as a required condition to solve some issue with the design. Speaking of DLSS, people only label it better than native because DLSS is always compared to native with TAA applied. Anything compared to the worst case scenario will appear improved.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The so-called best TAA algorithms.
I mean, they're trying to sell TAA, right? They're trying to sell just this cheap blanket over. And again, their developers are like, oh, hey, interesting. This would be good. And I'm pretty sure a lot of what he's shown, a lot of AAA games use this. And they use this as an excuse to make games cost more, to justify more money, but they're not putting in, like, the effort required to justify the cost.
Are needlessly expensive and brand specific. First, I have a bone to pick with DLAA.
DLAA uses too many pass frames for reconstruction, which causes two problems: long ghosting trails and significant blurring in motion compared to native with SMA or stationary output.
Now, hold on, and I thought things like this was just an artistic design, like it's made like this for artistic reasons. Not that it's, the byproduct of a cheap system that's touted as being, next gen.
And significant blurring in motion compared to native
with
SMA or stationary output. It also fails to smooth stair-stepping in motion compared to SMAA. Applying Circus Method with the newest DLL provides much better results, even though both examples are rendered at 1080p. But Circus Method isn't cheap. DLA at 1080p on a desktop 12GB 3060 costs 0.75 milliseconds. Circus Method bumps it up to 2.44 milliseconds. Image quality is far from poor, but its proprietary nature, cost, and Blue Moon AI mistakes makes it unreliable for the industry. XeSS 1.3 native AA mode suffers from the same problems as DLIA, but costs 1.44 milliseconds at 1080p on the same machine. Applying Circus Method gets image quality almost indistinguishable from Circus Method DLSS, but costs 4.6 milliseconds. Next is Unreal's TSR. It's a little more complex because it implements Circus Method natively, but I give it the fairest shot possible by using UE 5.4's.
I can absolutely see the difference between these. Absolutely no AA to the TSR. I think that looks better. Okay, well, no, never mind. I'm now looking at the shadows and everything.
More optimized implementation.
Yeah.
It's easy to appear superior to Unreal's TAA, but TSR suffers from a specific hazy fizzle appearance that video compression doesn't present well enough to pair with my criticism of that aspect. But besides whether or not you think it looks fine or not, the biggest issue again is the cost when set by the maximum quality settings for anti-aliasing.
Yeah, it costs more to run them, yeah. Huh. And you'd think this is just someone just autistically, looking into a slight problem that no one really cares about. Again, things like these is why they justify increasing the price of games, because it's this idea that, since there's more time and more resources being put into making games, obviously the price should, move to match. But now we're seeing that, no, that's not really the case. They're really just putting a blanket over it. And this is just games in particular, right? Just modern video games. But you could probably maybe even see these things in like remakes and remasters and other things.
It puts TSR at 10 times the cost of TAA and stands around 3 milliseconds on a 3060 at native 1080p. That's the difference between 60 FPS and 50 FPS. Still not convinced it's too expensive?
Oh.
Let's look at the
Homie's playing a PS1. Oh.
about TAA again from 2017. These are PS4 timings. And they didn't go with SMA because of the cost combined with temporal rejection, so they went with a sharpened FXA fallback for their 2-frame TAA instead. But what if they used SMA instead? We would get 0.36 milliseconds versus both unreasonable TSR timings.
Mm-hmm.
With such a low base cost, and these results at 30 FPS, if we wanted to keep AAA cost under 1 millisecond on modern affordable hardware, we could catapult the quality even further with 60 FPS and use that 0.73 milliseconds of headroom with aspects such as SMA or advanced motion vectors. Meanwhile, if TSR was put under the same scenario on screen, I guarantee you it would look like its slime show even at 60 FPS. These are TAA design requisites that must be combined to keep TAA computations costs low and stop it from producing the poor image quality we've settled for more than a decade now.
Okay, so it's a blanket putting over a blanket to make the games look visually good. And Rise Son of Rome, to be fair, looked good. But this game is from 2013. You'd think that after 9 years, CA would have been in a better place. Yeah, it's a game made 22, not 22 years ago, like 12 years ago, and it looks better. It probably uses TAA, but not in the way that games nowadays are using it.
But effect dependency is preventing progress. Unreal has long been founded on this dependency, and still heavily does. UE5 is set to worsen this industry problem because it's going to dominate the production of titles coming this generation, and Epic and its partners like CD Projekt Red have no concern over this matter. The Unreal documentation goes so far to claim that FXAA results in a loss of fidelity compared to their temporal methods, which you should be aware by now is only a half-truth.
They're trying to justify, why they skimp or why they use TAA as a blanket. Like, it makes sense, because, goofballs like this guy, I'm using that as a compliment, will absolutely point out things like this and be like, well, we see what you're trying to do. But the average gamer is just not going to do that.
Also provide misleading information about TSR, presenting it as a method to achieve near 4K quality with just 1080p input. Of course, they showcase this with a stationary example. In reality, 540p with sufficient temporal jitter and accumulation can resolve an 8K resolution image with a stationary camera. Out of context fairy tales like this are damaging game development.
Another out of context narrative Epic Games is pushing is that Nanite
has a faster way to render geometry and aims to eliminate the LOD pop-in association. Nanite does not increase performance unless you abuse your scene with extreme overdraw. I've compiled many tests on the specific Unreal forums thread that proves this. Nanite can cost as much as next-gen lighting, and pop-in will still remain a part of your gaming experience, because shadows, skeletal meshes, foliage, and open world partitions will still introduce pop. Even Brian Karras has stated Nanite can have worse performance on optimized meshes, but stated users still enable it to save disk space. This comment is a perfect example showing Epic Games' flawed position on what modern games really need.
It doesn't matter if your highly detailed open world game is 100 megabytes, but can't perform at a decent resolution and frame rate. Optimized meshes don't even require nanite compression, but studios who use nanite save themselves money by not investing in quality LEDs.
Yeah, and that makes sense. And again, you're making games in the corporate and games that it's like, okay, can we make games look better, but putting in like it's being used as just another product to pump out? Like, how do we make the product cost less, even though is it better quality? Well, it looks better, right? Until you take TAA off, right? Or until you don't use nanite,
And not investing in mesh introduction transitional effects that will give you better results. A good practice used on optimized game meshes is the use of bitmaps for subpixel detail, such as the words on these quixel stones. Nanite encourages and is designed to render subpixel detail geometrically instead of textures, which causes extreme pixel crawl and artifacting, which, you guessed it, can only be fixed by intense temporal frame smearing, creating a manufactured and limited scenario where flawed TAA appears as the better option. I understand the time and quality issues related to making good LEDs, but Nanite is the worst solution to this problem.
UE5 will dominate all other options because this engine excels in support.
I'm talking asset packages formatted specifically for Unreal, hundreds of documentations, shared public content, overwhelming logic support. Epic Games provides hundreds of free, basic but high-quality assets when you use Unreal. Every major third-party vendor with game-related software always prioritizes support for Unreal. Unreal offers a unique amount of support for critical tools for basic workflows like animation and debuggers. It's intuitive to use in comparison with competitor UI and programming designs. For studios, finding individuals to hire is made easy due to the widespread popularity and adoption of the engine. It's an advantage.
Yeah, so it has all these tools and options that with Unreal to, have a fix to those problems. Like, it just has the tools. It's just developers are not using the tools. They're just slapping a thin film, right? They're slapping window dressing, even though it has the fucking tools to fix these problems. Yeah, it may take more time, right? But it's something that can be done.
Advantage Unreal has acquired by simply existing as long as it has the way it has. That makes it the go-to for software and digital media. But the engine designs and its leadership should not be at the forefront of next-gen graphics development for critical reasons I'll outline right now.
Yeah, I mean, because they're a
Epic
company.
provides 30 FPS presets in Unreal because they don't believe it's inadequate on 9th generation consoles. Look at Fortnite 5.4's performance. The design is CPU intensive, sure, but the art style is simplistic enough to, even with GI, it should provide a computational advantage. Yet it's one of the hardest games to run on the GPU side, even with a 60 FPS or high preset enabled. If this is the best performance offered by the engine's creators, of course it'll defend 30 FPS when basic realism or complex stylized visuals come into play. Epic has no experience making realistic games. The Matrix Awakens is not a game. It's a visually exciting 30 FPS demo with enough motion blur to hide the 30 FPS screen judder.
Yeah, no,
Consumers who didn't own a 9th generation console at the time saw the 60 FPS tag on the YouTube presentation and assumed that was the case. People who did experience the demo firsthand were given basic interaction through a locked aiming system that wouldn't expose the fluidity issues of 30 FPS. Epic has no problem abusing the flaws of their TAA or temporal upscalers such as DLSS for several effects I've shown throughout this video. Epic defaults their engine to rely on temporal smearing when very few TAA independent features remain undocumented and hidden behind loopholes most unsuspecting developers will never find. They shamelessly promote heavy and blurry temporal upscaling as a viable solution on 9th generation consoles. And the biggest problem with Epic and their perspective on game development is that Fortnite drives their motivations for Unreal's development.
Yep.
Fortnite is a game with a very unique and uncommon problem the engine has to accommodate for. It's an open world map in the dynamic time of day and weather. This means real-time GPU calculations need to be computed per frame to account for those dynamic changes.
Yeah, and that's just the engine itself versus the type of game they made. Like, they made a game where, yeah, it has to render all of that stuff at the same time without, seemingly making, the graphics suffer because of it, or, having it, or at least it should, not having your computer run like a goddamn nuclear reactor rendering it all.
What makes these calculations so much more expensive in Unreal is the fact that Fortnite's entire environment is destructible. This is why more realistic open worlds from 8th generation console titles have no problem with day or weather cycles even though they don't use light maps. Because their environment, or in other words, primary source of indirect lighting, is mostly static. These games use lighting solutions that bait small, memory-efficient indirect lighting hints that your GPU doesn't have to compute. This way your GPU just calculates how these pre-computed hints correlate to the dynamic lights and shadows.
So it just fills
These lighting
in the
systems
gaps,
have their own limitations, but not a whole lot that can't be accelerated or overcome using 9th gen's hardware full potential. Fortnite's GI, which is Unreal's Lumen, can't let developers with the common environmental properties bake any high-quality indirect lighting hints that save you performance. Unreal's light maps are uninterpolatable and have serious leaking problems that can only be mitigated with stupid amounts of VRAM memory. So many Unreal games are wasting performance for basic visual standards because your GPU is computer whether or not a Fortnite wall has been destroyed or what that wall looks like, etc. Lumen is noisy without TAA because it isn't designed to use stable or high-quality indirect lighting hints. So top that inefficiency off in games with other Epic game technologies like Nanite, Virtual Shadow Maps, and TSR, and we're left with games created faster than ever and as inefficient and as terrible in motion as ever. When this happens over and over again, it standardizes, which is why other studios are following these inefficient designs for their mostly static games that could use faster systems.
Yeah, it's like, well, and if you're making game, it's like, well, if every other game developer does it, every other AAA game does it, and no one kicks up a fuss and it's effective, why would you? Like, why would you in particular put in the investment to try making it right, or try, doing it to where TAA isn't the crutch, or doing it so you don't have to use Nanite or DLSS, when you can just use these tools, no one will care, it's the consumer. The consumer doesn't know about this. Like this guy, it takes someone like him to figure things like this out and to point these things out. But, no one probably is going to listen to him. People will buy the games anyway based off that. I probably bought games, with information I didn't even know. Because, again, I'm a fucking consumer. I'm not a game developer. I don't know any of these fucking things. And I'm willing to guess the 5 people watching this video isn't going to know these things either.
Epic Games' indifference towards underperforming or poor visuals that appear in third-party Unreal games is the statement that big-budget studios should be customizing Unreal source code to provide more appropriate designs for their titles.
Yeah, they're not
True,
that.
but it's almost a catch-22. If a studio decides to use Unreal, it shows they lack the funding, interest, and/or innovation to manage the graphics themselves. This is exactly what happens when established studios throw out proprietary engines in favor of what Unreal offers.
Yeah, and Unreal is known for making, graphic, visually good-looking games. Like, it's the best. Like, if you want to make, maybe sort of a indie game type deal where graphics isn't the point, I mean, you might as well just use Unity. But if you want games like these, games with that, at least gives you the simulacrum of a visually pleasing game, you will just use Unreal.
I have one more problem with Epic that I need to cover. Unreal is used for the automotive,
And
film,
beefing with
simulation, and
Epic.
construction industries. That wouldn't be a problem if Epic wasn't constantly accountable.
Yeah, and that makes sense. Like, they work in other industries outside of gaming, so these things just make sense now to come to, because if it was just gaming and the gamers are pointing this out, it's like, oh, well, maybe they'd understand and have the fix it. But it's used for all these other industries of people that are normies. So why would they fix it?
Accounting for this user base and modeling Unreal with algorithms not meant for consumer efficient real-time rendering. Amidst of these issues, I gave Epic the benefit of the doubt and made a feedback thread on the Unreal developer forums 12 months ago, requesting the prioritization of game development and a larger focus on temporal smearing independence within their various effects. In only 11 months, it was voted as the #1 feedback from developers, replacing the previous #1 feedback thread made 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Epic released several Unreal versions, including nothing pertaining to the thread's request, despite a solid number of educated developers ready to progress beyond Epic's limited vision for this generation of gaming. This studio was created to begin the production of an intense action game based on a new IP consisting over 700 pages of detailed story and scenarios. Our game is conventional due to only requiring a mostly static world with dynamic lights, making our goals much more relevant to many developers and gamers. We have paused the production of our game, so our unrivaled passion for motion clarity and performance standards for untainted photorealism can be met, which is why our solution is to create a custom Unreal via crowdfunding, with custom systems that directly address the giant issues stated in this video. Don't think a custom Unreal engine will have an impact on developers? Take the Finals for example. It performs so much better than other UE5 games, people defend Epic's UE5 and solely blame studios for any worse performing titles. But the Finals' extreme destructive nature made using Nanite and the associated virtual shadow maps impossible. And most people don't know that the Finals uses NVIDIA's custom UE5 branch to make use of its lower quality but much faster dynamic GI, DDGI, instead of Epic's Lumen. The Finals performance doesn't contradict our views on Epic's Unreal. It only proves our point. NVIDIA's custom UE5 branch is exactly how we want to execute ours. But as of now, we need funding to motivate and hire skilled graphic programmers. Our engine will always be accessible for review and use under Epic's GitHub restrictions. Unlike industry leaders, we do not believe the future of graphics is dependent on blurry or expensive temporal smearing. But that future is only possible if you care enough and support our vision for modern graphics. So
yeah, and things like this, like you see that Unreal has the tools to make it to where you don't got to rely on these crutches. It's just, you know, AAA games don't do that. They're like, no, this is a product. We need to pump out product as cheap as possible. And obviously, it is in Unreal's interest to push their TLAA or TAA and to push their Nanite because, again, why would they say not to? They want more game companies to use their shit. So it makes sense why they would push these things. But we see that these things just don't really need. And again, it might take more time to make legitimately visually looking good games in Unreal. But the tools are there, is what the video's trying to say. But people would rather have, you know, companies would rather use the cheap window dressing option.
Sponsors, investors, we're ready to begin if we've convinced you. Threat Interactive, my studio, will be giving more details about how we intend to execute our plan in our next video. Until then, thank you for watching this one. And please like and subscribe to our channel and share this message on your favorite Discord server, subreddit, and social media so we can start elevating the future of gaming standards together.
Yeah, and like you'll watch a video and now I have this completely different outlook on video games just based off this video, because initially I don't care for like remakes or remasters, and it's not because of the graphics. It's just I don't want to support the idea of just slapping, you know, shinier paint on a game and demanding more money. But people say graphics don't matter, but it's like, again, if they're going to justify milking your wallet for it, then it does. Like, maybe it doesn't matter as far as aesthetics, but it absolutely does matter if they're demanding more fucking money from you. But yeah, this was like a year ago. I think this is like his first video from what I've seen. I mean, I thought there was I'm probably thinking of this video, but yeah, this is the first video addressing this. Very
rendering the same
very enlightening. You have to run 8K resolution for a game that looks as good as an old game did on 1440. You know something is very wrong. Yes. Crazy. crazy. I was crazy once. They locked me in. God, shut the fuck up. Optimization has gone down the drain. Yeah, and this is what I've been saying. Like, since 2015, you know, optimization, even the graphics, and okay, games look okay, visually okay if you don't look between the lines or if you justify it. There are 720, 60 FPS games on the original Xbox and 180p 60 on the PlayStation 3. Now, almost 2 decades later, we're told 5040p on Series S is just fine thanks to upscaling. Yeah, and to be fair, these probably looked good because you had like a shittier fucking TV and it didn't really show the graphical artifacts. But now, like, monitors and TVs are effectively too fucking good to where it'll point out these problems. It'll also point out this problem in the bottom too, right? Because, you know, you can't just shove 4K resolution out your ass, right? If the game isn't made with it in mind, you're going to have problems. And upscaling doesn't really help unless the game's made with that in mind. Same thing with TAA, right? You know, games are made with TAA in mind, you know, just to, as the blanket. Basically, TAA is an implement to mask all the graphical effects flickering like hell with a soft blur that almost literally like playing without glasses. Yes. Me watching with T70 Ti. Yeah, you tell him. He's like, yeah. Even though everything looks garbage with his. Yeah, this is a very interesting video. It really, like, now I have information. Like, I look at games through a different light now, which I don't know is good or bad, but it's definitely something. But anyway, y'all have fun. That's all I gotta say. Peace.